Thank you, Ron. And good morning, everyone. My name is Claudia Sequeira. I am what we called a global black belt within Microsoft. What is that, right? And that is just a very fancy name to say that we are specialized in modernizations of mainframe and mid-range. And I am a global black belt for mainframe and mid-range transformations. A little bit of my background. I started doing simulations in the NIH, actually, programming a lot of active shooter simulations. Then I switched into Microsoft, where I started with a support role. And then I switched into the GBB community, which I started with a hybrid Azure Arc, Azure Local expertise and focus. And then 3 years back, I switched into mainframe and mid-range specialization. And it's been great. It's been great to learn a lot about mainframes, adopt what my knowledge that I had in the cloud into this mainframe and mid-range ecosystem, which is very complex and a lot of struggles. But that is the challenge that I was looking for, and that is the challenge that I love. So with that, I'll turn it over to Alfredo to introduce himself.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you, Ron, for the invitation to participate in today's webinar. It is really a pleasure to be here with you today. And a little bit about myself. I am part of the same group as Claudia. I am also a global black belt for mainframe and mid-range modernization at Microsoft. In my case, I have been doing this type of work, meaning modernizing legacy systems for over 25 years, coming close to 30 years. And it has been a great ride. And one of the things that excites me today about this field and being at Microsoft is precisely the infusion of AI, and in particular Gen AI, to these complex transformations, but necessary transformations. I have been with Microsoft for about 3 years. Before that, I was working in different systems integrators and transformation migration companies, always collaborating with Microsoft as a partner. And to pick up on Ron's theme, and before I pass it back to Claudia for the next slide, as you notice in the title of this presentation, we wanted to talk about one very specific application of AI and Gen AI, which is the modernization of legacy systems. We all know that AI has impacted all activities of all human activities, in particular all activities related to information technology. But in this case, it has been really interesting to see what has happened. So we wanted to talk about something different, something that we both know a lot about, and something that is important to many of our customers. And I hope you find this interesting. So Claudia, back to you.
Thank you, Alfredo. Perfect. So we wanted to get started with what are the complexities that we mostly see with mainframe systems, right? Before we even get into talking about mainframe modernization or transformation. We summarize these complexities into 6 points. The first one is the fact that it's a monopolistic ecosystem. We can think about 3 vendors that, provide these type of mainframe systems, where there's, little documentation about these. There's less and less people that know how to manage these systems. So it really evolves the monopolistic ecosystem. It evolves a domino effect of consequences that we are trying to overcome, and we're trying to break that silo. Moving into complex dependencies, as we all know, all the applications and databases that are siloed in mainframes are what we call monolithic, right? They're this big data workload and application load of programs that it's all intertwined with each other, as well as dependent on external ecosystems, right? So breaking that monolithic within, it's a huge complexity, and then let alone breaking the dependencies with the external ecosystems, right? As I mentioned a little bit in the first complexity, there's also a skill shortage, right? There's a skill shortage for managing the hardware itself, but also a skill shortage for the programming languages that we typically see in the systems, right? COBOL developers, RPG developers, JCL, assembly, and the fourth generation languages people know a little bit more and that get compiled into these other COBOL RPG, but it's still very little, right? And those resources that our customers already have are already being consumed in developing in the mainframe. So they have little time to focus on the modernization or even explain that code and those applications to another developer that is trying to come in. Huge volumes of data. We know the mainframes back then were the supercompute of on-premises. So it's given that we find, core applications and huge data loads that no one or a few people have got in there and done a little bit of, filtering, analysis of that data. What is it doing? How, we typically see 30 terabytes of archival data, but what are those archival data, right? You cannot think about those 30 terabytes into just a backup of the image. No, you have way more data and stuff that you haven't touched in 20 to 40 years, right? So we're trying to break that huge block of data into something that can be consumed and just consumed in a more amicable way. Legacy data sources. We have not only legacy programming languages, right, but also databases that are non-relational, that have store procedures and data proxies that are very complicated in that it's also intertwined within the database. So when we try to go into a more relational database, it becomes unmanageable. It becomes like not apparent the logic within the databases. Then we have proprietary infra, right? These are systems that a few other companies have developed products that can work within the mainframe, but really it's a locked in, right? You don't have a way out. You don't have a lot of flexibility to have other agents to install in the mainframe. There's a few that can, act as another component in the mainframe, but there's little, right? There's little, and that is the the breadth of the mainframe, right? It's extremely secure. It was meant for those big enterprises to do a lot of programs, create a lot of transactions of their core applications. So there's little things that you can adapt to the mainframe. So when we talk about generative AI in the cloud and other cloud providers, we want to open that system and be able to take some of that data and applications so that we can start interacting.
Claudia, let me ask you a question before you move to the next slide.
Yes.
In your opinion, how is the current state of the business of mainframe modernization? What are you seeing? What are the trends? What is the level of interest that companies are showing today to modernize mainframe systems and move them to Azure in particular, but in general to the cloud?
One other thing too, just to keep it in perspective, even if you're not a mainframe developer per se, I know there are lots of people from the IRS or on this webinar who deal with the mainframes. Keep in mind that this methodology is appropriate to other kinds of sophisticated legacy systems that everyone's grappling with.
Absolutely.
Not just
Absolutely.
mainframes. So when you're looking at this, mainframes are almost the hardest kind of cloud migration, much like Office 365 was the easiest cloud migration. So we wanted to bring you these expert speakers to address a more complicated solution, knowing that they can deal with your mainframes or HPC or Oracle, whatever you might have, and also bring in colleagues who could deal with other applications and trying to move them to the cloud in the best way.
Great point, Ron. Great point, Ron. Mainframe modernization is like the New York of modernization methodologies. If you can make it in mainframe modernization, you can make it anywhere. like they said about New York City. Yeah, totally agree with you. And it was purposely that we picked mainframe because of the complexities, specific complexities, and every single of these complexities translates into money, translates into business risk, and that's why this is an exciting field. But Claudia, if you could please just give
Of
me a brief
course.
state of the mainframe modernization business, in your opinion.
Of course. Thank you for the question, Alfredo. We are seeing a lot of increase in demand for mainframe transformations. Why? AI, right? AI is helping accelerate these project cycles. It's helping de-risk the project cycle. And so we are not only seeing an increase of demand for these type of projects, but we're also seeing a lot of push for our customers to reduce the costs, reduce the amount of people, and of course time, right? But it's also a little naive to think that AI can do a mainframe transformation by itself, right? We not only depend on the technological capabilities of either tools or AI, but we depend on people, right? We in Microsoft, our mainframe transformation program is dependent on people, right? Again, it's not it's naive to think that only one person can bring all of the expertise and solve each one of the complexities that I mentioned before. We think that in order to make this project happen, we need a trifecta of partners and expertise, right? We have in our orchestration, the cloud provider Azure, us as the infrastructure, the target platform where we're trying to get to, but also system integrators to provide that expertise of, okay, what is the application doing, right? What is the functionality, the end-up functionality that we need to remain and we need to have in the modernized application. Other than that, the system integrators also have have experienced a lot of these roadblocks, either from a mainframe project that they've had before or from other projects, right? How to stabilize a containerized application, right? For example. That's the second pillar of our mainframe program. And then we have the ISVs, right? The software vendors, the tools that make it happen, right? From COBOL to Java, that make it happen from an API automation perspective, right? And so in Microsoft, we really do believe that the trifecta of these three entities will bring the skills, the expertise, and also the technicality in order to make these projects successful, right? And it's an orchestration, right? We first agree and brainstorm what are the solutions that are applicable into each one of the scenarios, because none of the mainframe projects are the same. And so we try to come up with a solution for each one of the scenarios, each one of the complexities of the particular project. Then we orchestrate. Okay, who's doing that? Who's responsible for what? How are we going to make sure that the testing, right? That everyone that has access to the system is able to perform the testing that is necessary. Who's going to do the testing, right? Does the customer already have test material? So those are the things that we're trying to orchestrate and foresee so that we can execute with little risk, with little complexities, with success. So I also want to mention a little bit in this right side of the screen what we are each trying to bring, right? From a cloud perspective, we're trying to bring the experience of an infrastructure that is scalable. We're going from a single thread, monolithic type of infrastructure to eventually, right, a scalable application or a multi-thread, something that is able to increase the amount of resources by itself. But that is not magic, right? That is not a button that you press and it quickly transforms into a multi-thread application that requires a lot of agile and iterative rounds of, okay, transforming the program, transforming the infrastructure, transforming the type of application. We also want to have a solution that is able to recover itself and use all of the cloud performance and reliability, right? That's also not part of the mainframe logic, right? Before in the mainframe, it was more of if you want to have a disaster recovery solution, you would have to buy another mainframe, right? So we're trying to, or we are adapting the application to be able to quickly, if something happens in downtime, right, quickly come up and recover automatically. From a data catalogization and synchronization, many of the scenarios, we're not bringing the entire mainframe. We are decomposing 20%, 50% of the mainframe workloads. And so there's a little bit of, okay, what are we going to do with all of the workloads that are remaining in the mainframe versus the ones that are being modernized, right? How are we going to synchronize that data? What are we going to use to do that? How is the load balancer going to be able to recognize that, right? And then new development. The idea and what we want to bring with mainframe transformations is not, okay, get rid of the mainframe. No, we welcome the mainframe. We want the mainframe to be part of our ecosystems as well, but we also want those workloads that are in the mainframe to start interacting with the new development, with new AI capabilities, with new AI models, right? Yeah, so that is all what we're trying to do with mainframe transformations, and it takes a village. It's not only a one person or one model activity. I'll turn it over to Alfredo.
Well said, Claudia. And you mentioned that every single mainframe transformation project is as unique as the mainframe environment that the customer has, and that's true. And to try to standardize the process and to remove the confusions and the fears that customers face in when they embark into this type of efforts, there is a methodology that is, for the most part, applied in every single project, depending on the specificities of the technology to be transformed and the partners that are executing it. And that process can be broken down into few very specific or very distinct tasks or phases from the moment the project starts to the final moment when the application is deployed and goes live into production, application or applications. There is a very important step where you have to prepare the source code, a very challenging step because in many cases, there is pieces of the inventory that are missing and need to be found, they need to be put in one place. There is the need to document or refresh the documentation of the existing legacy system. One of the main challenges we face in this type of projects, but with customers that have legacy environments, is that the documentation about these systems have not been kept up to date. And in many cases, they don't even know where it is. The documentation is important because you need to know where you are to be able to design where you're going to. But also the design of the to-be state is an important step in the journey. Then it comes the moment of changing the application source code, whether it is through a rewrite from scratch or a refactoring where you're changing the programming language. That's where you are bringing over to the new environment the IP, the intellectual property, the business logic that is unique to your business, that makes you different than anybody else. So that is definitely one of the important parts of the process that you have to test. Testing is, in many cases, a third to half of the effort in any modernization project. And for testing, there is its own unique challenges. What about the data? What do I do if I have sensitive information in my production data? How do I create test cases for a new application that has new functionality? Also, productivity of the developers. How do I bring my co-developers that, for the most part, used to work in a silo, separated from the rest of my development community, into a CI/CD pipeline to take advantage of DevOps operations that are creating so much value for the rest of my organization? And how do I keep track of this project? How do I know accurately that I am, following the project plan, that I am not following behind? How much are my expenses? What are the challenges that we encounter? How they were addressed? How I am retrofitting the original design of the to-be state based on things that are discovered, and there is always things that are discovered during the transformation of the source code and the migration of the data. And all this is reviewed by the experts. And the experts, as Claudia mentioned, is a village of the users of the application, the developers of the application, the systems integrator that's taking care of recreating the entire application environment on the target platform, and also the experts from the company that's doing the transformation of the application. And this is an important point. The most successful transformation projects, mainframe modernization projects, are those where the customers, the owners of this application, are taking advantage of companies that have been doing this for a very long time, that have tooling that can bring automation so that the errors are minimized and the speed of the transformation is accelerated. And then there is always the need to add new code, to add new functionality to these systems. This is a significant investment the company is making, so we want to make sure that the value that these applications bring is increased, not only by removing the debt, the technical debt, and the other constraints that were mentioned before, but also by adapting the system to the current needs of the business. There is always the final testing before going into production, the end user acceptance testing, the integration testing that is required, with similar challenges to the unit testing that was done during the actual transformation project. And finally, you have to create an environment to be able to deploy, and this environment has to be adequate to provide the same reliability, the same performance, the same security as before. So as of recently, these were the members of this village, the human resources from the customer, from the partner, from the systems integrator. But now we have a new player in this space that is creating a significant advantage and generating a lot of interest, and that's AI. AI, in particular, the use of the AI interfaces provided by copilots like Microsoft Copilot or GitHub Copilot. And I will try to briefly touch upon how these tools can create immense value and accelerate the transformation in some of these areas that I highlighted before. Let's start with preparation of the source code. It is usually the case that the source code, the assets that make up this application, are not all following the same standard. There's often the case that the programs are missing the extension that identifies them as core programs or as copybooks. So you can create AI tools, or you can create AI agents that allow you to analyze the volume of the assets and try to categorize them and correct the naming if this is not in line with the nomenclature that you're expecting to be able to move forward with the project. There is also descriptions that you can create of the data structures based on the data layouts that are provided with the application assets. Then for the documentation, this is an area where the sky is the limit with GenAI and tools like GitHub Copilot that can look at the source code and understand what the application is doing and document the business functions that this application is doing in order for you to understand what you're going to, how you're going to transform this application to preserve the functionality, or perhaps even to enhance this functionality. This is an area where you can generate diagrams and you can generate charts and simply provide visibility to the existing system in a way that in most cases doesn't exist. But not only to the legacy system, you can also apply this type of tools, productivity tools fueled by AI and Gen AI in particular, to the design of the to-be architecture, so that you can remove the tedious tasks related to creating documentation, to making it available in an easy to consume fashion to all the members of the projects. Then the application transformation part comes in, and we all have seen different demos of tools like GitHub Copilot or ChatGPT, transforming COBOL into Java or C# code. And it's really exciting to see how it is possible to help a Java programmer understand a COBOL program and generate a Java program from the legacy code at the click of a button and then enhance it. Again, I would like to share a word of caution here. These tools typically are great at handling one program at a time, one asset at a time. There is companies that have created very interesting chains with AI tools that allow to leverage or to increase the value that a standard rules-based transformation tools provide in this type of projects. But it's important. It is definitely an important component to empower the developers in being active participant of this transformation, but better understanding the current applications, but also the future state of the legacy system. When it comes to testing, generation of user test cases is definitely an area where GenAI excels by looking at patterns in the application and the data, and suggesting areas that should be included in the body of tests cases that are going to be performed based on the transformation that has occurred, preparation of the data, creating synthetic data to be used for testing without having to share sensitive or private information during the transformation project is also a great use of GenAI. Likewise, for the CI/CD pipeline and DevOps, generation of scripts and being able to bring people up to speed quickly on how to take advantage of these modern development and productivity tools. The transformation reports, the generation of visual and easily digestible information about the state of the project, the transformation that has occurred, can also take significant advantage from the capabilities of GenAI and other AI services and products. In many of these projects, there is a need to generate new code, new functionality. And again, here, tools like GitHub Copilot can help you standardize the generation of new user interfaces, new APIs to interface with the legacy application in a way that you remove the tedious tasks from the hands of the developers and let them focus on the actual value activities, like creating the specific business logic, the specific new business logic that's going to enhance the application. And then finally, again, validating the application before deploying into production, and before deploying to production, generating the specifications to provision the landing zone for this application, in this case, the Azure landing zone. And tools like the Copilot for Azure can be very useful in recommending the configuration, the topology of the landing zone, but also monitoring and operating these applications once they have been deployed into the cloud. So I would like to pause here for a second to see if there is any questions or any comments from the audience before we move on and wrap this presentation today.
Hey, Alfredo, one thing that I just want to point out, we see a lot of challenges amongst new college grads who study programming, and it's reflective of a change going on where NLP, natural language processing, English language is almost the dominant coding language these days. So what it applies to for organizations who are grappling with software modernization, be it on mainframes or any solution, you're going to find a greater need, not so much for doing the detailed coding, but for using AI tools for anything from mainframes on down to do it correctly. But it's almost that bottom right where you're talking about app testing, architecture review. That's a big part of what goes on to ensure that the code is generated correctly. There used to be a lot of concerns that there were no COBOL programmers left to maintain applications, and AI provides a window for transitioning you over years away from COBOL dependency, but you have to make sure you're doing it with the correct human oversight and human guardrails.
Absolutely. Thank you for that comment, Ron. You are spot on that. The silver tsunami, if you haven't heard that term, look it up. I also wrote an article on LinkedIn about the impact of the silver tsunami, is the retirement in mass of the baby boomer generation. That's the generation that learned COBOL. That's the generation that has maintained these COBOL systems and RPG systems and assembler programs. Is impacting significantly the business of our corporations that have still mainframe programs, mainframe systems that use those legacy languages. So when you get an influx of new graduates joining your development teams, they really can benefit from having tools that allow them to faster understand and get a hold on the existing applications so that they can contribute to the maintenance and development or help in the transformation of these applications into modern development language that they can use. So the onboarding of new development resources and technical resources is definitely an area where the use of AI in general, but Gen AI in particular, could be extremely impactful.
And Alfredo,
Yes, Claudia.
with GitHub Copilot, independently if it's a mainframe transformation or a Oracle database transformation, are you telling me that I have a new resource in each one of my departments, as an example, in the development department, in the application department, in infrastructure, in the deployment and testing? Are you telling me that I have a new resource in each one?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it, Claudia. Thank you for bringing that up. I would suggest that the audience looks at tools like Copilot, GitHub Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot as a new team member, as somebody who can be a valuable addition to the team. Definitely not a replacement for the SMEs that are in charge of all these areas that were brought up, but somebody that can help and take on doing the tasks that are repetitive, that are tedious, and freeing up time of the experts to do those tasks that are truly differentiating and bring additional value to the enterprise. And in addition to the three main compilers, for lack of a better word, like the Microsoft 365 or the GitHub Copilot, you can also create your own agents. You create agents that take advantage of technologies like retrieval augmented generation, so that they can first go into your code repository and look at your standards and the way you like to use nomenclature, and then go out to the LLM and generate a response that is specifically tailored to your environment, to your development shop when they answer a query from the customer. Definitely, that's the intention behind the co-pilot. The co-prefix is that is an addition to your team, is somebody who's going to work next to you, shoulder by shoulder with you in accomplishing whatever task is that you're trying to accelerate using AI. Great point. Thank you. So, unless there is any other questions, and Ron, I don't know if you can monitor the chat.
Yeah, I can monitor the chat. Great if we can get a few more questions as Claudia and Alfredo wrap up.
No, perfect. I just saw a comment from Michelle, and that is a great point, Michelle. And that's definitely an area where AI and tools like GitHub Copilot that take advantage of LLMs and generative AI can be extremely useful. The challenge you mentioned, which is that the converted code is not as maintainable, as clean as the original code, is definitely a challenge, a problem, because yeah, you got rid of the COBOL language, but now you have a Java or a C# or a .NET program, a C# program that is impossible to maintain, that nobody can understand. Although there has been significant progress using traditional transformation tools based on rules and creating highly maintainable code, Gen AI can also improve the quality of the generated code and make it more maintainable. And the beauty of that is that you will have the power without having to be an expert in transformation. Once you receive the body of Java or C# code that the expert migration company generated for you, you can then fine-tune that code, make it more maintainable, better performing, in line with your own coding standards, so that it facilitate the maintenance. Thank you for bringing that point up. It's a very important one.
And something that I would like to add is, usually when that happens, right, when we ran into situations where, the customer used an automated code conversion tool and it didn't meet their standards, that is a perfect way to start training an AI model to understand your particular flavor of the code, right? And it will be a model that it's not a one case scenario where it's only going to be used with mainframe transformations, but it's an opportunity to train your model and have it related also and applicable to other projects, right? Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Claudia.
Let me do this. As you're Are you just about finished? Because I know Sam Jaffrey we can make this a little more interactive before we switch over. But I know Sam is with a big consultancy right there in South Florida. Sam, I just unmuted you. Do you want to ask your question directly?
Hey Ron, appreciate that. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes, go ahead.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate you guys taking the time to go over all this. It's been very insightful so far. Just a question that I had right now, was really what are kind of some of the biggest security risks that you're hearing that are coming with deploying generative AI models in enterprise environments? We work with a lot of enterprise clients and stuff like that. And, there's a lot of concerns around that. And I'm curious, what your guys' thoughts are on all that.
Yep. Great point, Sam. Thank you for your question. Definitely top of mind for Microsoft and for our customers. How do we use GI and in particular Gen AI in a way that is responsible, in a way that is secure? There is many areas in which Gen AI can be dangerous if not used properly, if not implemented in a way that is thoughtful. I think the most significant one I would say is in generating code that might have vulnerabilities in it. If you are not checking for that, if you are not grounding your whatever tool you're using, your Copilot or your own agent that you generated in a way that you're looking for those vulnerabilities, you could easily introduce code that could be, in the worst case, malicious code. In the most typical case, just vulnerable for attacks. So I would say that that's one of the main concerns regarding security will be, in particular, in the application development space, which is what Claudia and I specialize. I hope that answered your question, but definitely that is not an exhaustive list of security threats that need to be addressed with Gen AI.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Alfredo.
Great. And I'm
Thank
sure our next presentations by Arun and Louise and Renato from Google each has a different strategy. The content will be a little different, but I can tell you they're all top security concerns. Responsible AI are absolutely top of mind for everyone.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So,
anything else you want to summarize now, Alfredo and Claudia?
Yeah, Rom, just some final thoughts. There is plenty of studies that show the very real impact that Gen AI is having in software development and maintenance practices in general, but in particular in mainframe transformation. We picked a particular report from BNC, recent study from BNC, one of the major players in the mainframe space, that identifies how Gen AI can improve automation in a modernization project, reduce the risks, gain insights into the transformation and the current state as well as the future state, and accelerate training for the participants in the project. So I encourage you to continue looking into this application of these technologies and making sure that you are taking advantage of what it has to offer. And in the next slide, you will see an email address in which you can reach out to us if you have any specific questions around mainframe or mid-range systems transformation. I included the LinkedIn profile for Claudia and myself on the chat. I encourage you to please reach out and network with us. We look forward to an active dialogue around this very exciting topic, and thank Ron and the audience very much for this opportunity today.
Thank you so much.